Before we begin today's case, I wanted to share something I've recently been enjoying. June's Journey, the sponsor of today's video, is a beautifully designed hidden object mystery game set in the glamorous 1920s. You play as June Parker, a smart and determined amateur detective trying to uncover the truth behind her sister's untimely death, and along the way, you uncover long-buried family secrets. With each new chapter, the mystery deepens. The hidden object scenes are full of new clues and clever twists that challenge your eye for detail. As you progress, you unlock new locations, events, and even get to decorate your own island. If you love solving mysteries and piecing together the truth like we do in today's case, this game is perfect for you. You can download June's Journey for free by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code. It's available on iOS, Android, and PC. In June 1978, what started as a calm summer morning in San Jose, California, quickly turned tragic. A beloved teacher lost her life in a shocking attack that stunned an entire community. Her name was Diane Peterson. Born in 1952, Diane was just 26 years old and taught at Broome High School. She was well liked by students and respected by her fellow teachers. Outside of school, Diane lived a peaceful and steady life, surrounded by people who admired and cared for her. On June 16th, just a day after summer break had begun, Diane returned to the school to clean out her classroom and finish some industrial tasks. The building was quiet, with only a few staff members around, but that silence was shattered when Diane was suddenly and viciously attacked inside one of the school corridors. She was stabbed in the chest, completely off guard and unprepared. In a panic, she tried to run, screaming for help as blood poured from her wound. Her attacker fled, vanishing before anyone could intervene. Diane collapsed not far from where the attack happened. The screams alerted other teachers, who ran to find her lying on the ground, severely wounded. They tried to save her, performing CPR as they waited for paramedics. But despite their efforts, Diane was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at Good Samaritan Hospital. The San Jose police launched an immediate investigation. A brutal stabbing inside a school building in broad daylight shook both the authorities and the entire city. Officers questioned every staff member on campus that day, trying to understand what had happened and who could have done such a thing. Attention eventually turned to a 16-year-old student named Harry Nicky Nickerson. Though no hard evidence emerged at the time, suspicion lingered. Then, in 1983, 5 years after the crime, a former Broome High School student came. The alleged motive behind the crime emerged from claims that Diane had caught Nicky involved in drug dealing on school grounds. Though the accusation was shocking, the student who had come forward with this information later recanted his statement. That retraction significantly weakened the case. With no direct evidence linking Nicky to the crime, prosecutors were unable to press charges at the time. Despite this setback, a composite sketch based on eyewitness descriptions bore a striking resemblance to Nicky, keeping him under quiet suspicion. Over the years, additional leads surfaced. One witness reportedly told investigators that Nicky had confessed to the crime, and another claimed to have seen him carrying a knife in front of a teacher known as Teacher Dear. These tips gave the investigation brief momentum, but each time, the trail went cold. No piece of information ever arose to the level of solid, court-admissible evidence. In 1984, a year after the initial witness recanted, another individual came forward stating that Nicky had once again implicated himself in Diane's murder. Although this revived interest in the case, prosecutors ultimately concluded that the testimony alone wasn't strong enough to pursue charges. The absence of physical evidence and the passage of time continued to block any meaningful progress. Eventually, the investigation stalled, and the case officially went cold. Then, in 2023, nearly 45 years after Diane's murder, the San Jose District Attorney's Office reopened the case, hoping that advancements in forensic technology might finally yield answers. Investigators re-examined preserved evidence from the scene and conducted DNA analysis using the latest techniques. But even with these efforts, the results were inconclusive. No DNA match was found, and the identity of Diane's killer remained elusive. Everything changed in June 2025, when an unexpected tip finally broke the silence. A relative of Harry Nicky Nickerson came forward, offering a long-held confession that altered the trajectory of the case. According to the family member, Nicky had returned home just minutes after the attack on that summer day in 1978 and admitted to stabbing Diane. The confession confirmed what many had suspected for decades. Further investigation into Nicky's life revealed a disturbing pattern of violence. He had been convicted of multiple serious crimes in the years following Diane's murder, including armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and kidnapping. In 1984, Nicky was critically injured in a drug-related robbery. His downward spiral continued, and in 1993, he took his own life. The district attorney's office announced that no charges would be filed against the relative who came forward. They clarified that the individual had not been involved in the crime, nor had they helped to conceal it. Described as emotional and visibly relieved, the relative had carried the weight of this secret for nearly half a century. San Jose's chief of police released a statement following the development, acknowledging the long and painful journey Nearly 5 decades have passed since a young teacher's life was tragically taken. While the suspect will never stand trial or be held accountable, we hope this long-awaited resolution brings some measure of peace to Diane's family and to a community that has lived with this unanswered grief for far too long. The department also emphasized its continued commitment to justice. Let this serve as a solemn reminder. The statement read, "No matter how much time passes, we will continue to seek the truth, because every victim matters and every life deserves justice." In response, a member of Diane's family expressed heartfelt gratitude to the investigators who worked tirelessly on the case. After 47 long years of waiting, they finally had an answer. "Diane was a beautiful and wonderful person who is missed dearly," the relative said. "We're thankful to those who never gave up." In 2004, another heartbreaking mystery would unfold, this time in Fresno, California. On October 31st, a local resident walking near California and Polk Avenues stumbled upon the body of a woman lying in an open dirt field. The discovery was horrifying. Authorities were called immediately, and police quickly arrived to secure the scene. The woman was identified as 43-year-old Barbara Lee, who was also known by the name Barbara Park. It was quickly determined that Barbara had lost her life in the very field where she was found. There were no signs that her body had been moved, suggesting she was attacked and killed right there. Detectives began canvassing the area and interviewing people close to Barbara, hoping to piece together the final moments of her life. They learned she had last been seen alive the night before, on October 30th. While this gave them a narrow time frame to work with, it didn't bring them any closer to the truth. No one could explain why Barbara had been in that field or who she might have met there. The circumstances were murky and there were no known witnesses. An autopsy revealed that she had died from blunt force trauma, but beyond that, the case stalled, with no suspects and no solid leads. The investigation eventually went cold. For more than 20 years, Barbara's loved ones were left with questions and no closure until a breakthrough came in April 2025. Fresno County Sheriff's Office cold case detectives, working with the Department of Justice Crime Lab, re-examined the physical evidence collected in 2004. Among the preserved materials was a sample of DNA that had been safely stored in anticipation of future advances in forensic science. That DNA was uploaded to the national database. This time, it yielded a hit. The DNA matched 61-year-old Robert Castillo. The lead was the strongest one the case had ever seen. Castillo was swiftly taken into custody. But what made this development even more disturbing was that his DNA not only matched the sample from Barbara Lee's crime scene, it also linked him to 2 other unsolved sexual assault cases from October 2003 and September 2004. Those earlier assaults had remained unresolved for years, but the same DNA evidence tied them all together, revealing a disturbing pattern. Investigators learned that Castillo had a criminal record dating back to the mid-1980s, with multiple prison stints in the 80s, 90s. However, his DNA had never been entered into the federal database until 2007, following legislative changes that expanded mandatory collection from certain categories of offenders. It was this delayed entry years after Barbara's murder that allowed the match to finally occur. Castillo now faces a series of serious charges spanning multiple years and victims. Prosecutors are working to build a comprehensive case that presents the full scope of his alleged crimes. If convicted on all counts, he could face life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He remains in custody at the Fresno County Jail, with bail set at $2.1 million. He has not posted bond and awaits further court proceedings. Fresno County District Attorney Lisa Smithamp issued a public statement, expressing sorrow for Barbara's family. For all of this to be unearthed again after 20 years is incredibly difficult. Our thoughts are with the Lee family. Investigators suspect there may be other victims still unidentified and are encouraging anyone with information to come forward. They remain committed to uncovering the full truth. In August 1977, a delivery driver would stumble across something equally horrifying in a quiet rural corner of Geneva, Indiana. Spanning nearly half a century, this is the story of a crime nearly lost to time, a tale of confession, missteps, and an enduring fight for justice. Everett Armstrong was born on June 19, 1893, in the quiet town of Cogwell, nestled in Rowan County, Kentucky. Raised in a lively household with several siblings, Everett grew up surrounded by both responsibility and music. On January 9, 1915, he married Ada Olive Hote in their home county. Together, they started a family and welcomed a son into the world. Everett's sense of duty extended beyond his family. He registered for the World War I draft and went on to serve in the U.S. Army during the global conflict. After returning from war, he resumed a humble civilian life and eventually settled in Geneva, Indiana. By 1977, Everett was living alone in a small 2-room mobile home on County Road 300 West. Locals knew him as a quiet man with a talent for playing the banjo, a familiar figure in the rural community, but on the afternoon of August 19, 1977, that peaceful image was shattered. Around 4 p.m., a delivery driver discovered Everett's lifeless body inside his mobile home, not far from State Road 116. Alarmed, The driver immediately alerted authorities. Officers from the Indiana State Police and Adams County Sheriff's Department responded swiftly and identified the deceased as Everett Armstrong. An initial examination revealed that he had been fatally shot. A formal investigation was launched, and Everett's death was officially ruled a homicide. Early inquiries uncovered a potential clue. Neighbors reported hearing a single gunshot around dusk on August 18th, the evening before Everett's body was found. Despite this promising lead, there were no immediate suspects, and the investigation quickly grew complicated. Evidence was limited, and with little to go on, the case stalled. Then, in October 1977, a wave of hope arrived when 4 individuals came forward with information pointing toward a possible suspect. Their testimonies breathed new life into the case, and investigators began to believe they might be closing in on answers. But even with these accounts, solid evidence connecting anyone to the crime remained out of reach. Once again, momentum faded, and the case fell back into silence. In 1981, there was another breakthrough. 3 individuals were arrested in connection to Everett's murder. For a brief time, it felt like justice might finally be served, but that hope quickly disappeared. Within 6 months, all charges were dropped. Further investigation revealed that none of the 3 had any credible connection to the crime. With their release, the trail went cold once again. Decades passed, but in 2013, after more than 30 years of dormancy, the Indiana State Police reopened the case. Determined to take a fresh look, detectives began revisiting old witness statements and re-examining the limited evidence with modern tools and fresh perspective. What they found changed everything. Much of the original hope from 1977 had centered around a man named James A. McBride, too. As the case was reinvestigated, detectives uncovered consistent accounts from 4 separate individuals, each of whom said McBride had confessed to the crime within 24 hours of Everett's death. What made these statements stand out wasn't just the timing, it was the level of detail. Each witness recalled McBride sharing specific facts about the murder, including elements that had never been made public. One witness even stated that McBride had shown them the firearm he used, adding a chilling layer of physical evidence to back up the verbal confession. The consistency among the 4 accounts, paired with the accuracy of McBride's descriptions, aligned perfectly with what investigators had found at the crime scene in 1977. For the first time in decades, a picture began to emerge that pointed squarely toward one man, a man whose name had been whispered for years, but whose role in the murder had never been fully pursued. At the crime scene, many of the details James A. McBride too had described were confirmed specific elements that had never been shared with the public. These were details only the killer or law enforcement would have known, giving McBride's confessions significant weight. Adding to the suspicion was his behavior in the immediate aftermath of the crime, which witnesses described as bizarre and unsettling. Those who had heard McBride's words and seen his actions never forgot them. For decades, their accounts had sat in cold case files, waiting to be seen in the right light. With modern investigative techniques and renewed dedication, those early statements suddenly carried undeniable importance. It was also established that McBride's confessions had occurred prior to August 20, 1977, just one day after Everett Armstrong's body had been discovered, firmly cementing the timeline. Unfortunately, by the time the full case came together, James A. McBride too had already passed away. He died on June 3, 2024, in Adams County, Indiana. His death closed the door on any chance of prosecution or a courtroom confession. Though he would never face a judge, years of investigative work had finally revealed the truth. In May 2025, after extensive review, the Adams County prosecutor concluded that the Evans confessions, consistent witness accounts, and unique crime scene details was overwhelming. Had McBride been alive, formal charges would have been filed, while no trial would ever occur. The identity of Everett Armstrong's killer had finally been confirmed, bringing long-awaited closure to one of Indiana's oldest unsolved murders. Just as one cold case reached a conclusion, another was about to be reopened, this time over 2,000 miles away on the streets of San Francisco. In May 1992, a passerby made a grim discovery in a narrow utility corridor in the heart of the city. The lifeless body of a woman lay partially concealed in the shadows of Hunger Alley. The scene was quiet, the location remote, but what had happened there was anything but ordinary. Police were immediately called to the scene. Officers from the San Francisco Police Department arrived within minutes, sealing off the area and launching an investigation. The woman was soon identified as 45-year-old Nancy Hernandez. By that time in her life, Nancy had become unhoused. Her world had narrowed to the unforgiving streets of San Francisco, where survival was a daily struggle. Though she lived without the stability many took for granted, Nancy remained a familiar face in the community, a figure of quiet resilience. But on that early May morning, her life came to a violent end. The condition of her body and the surrounding scene left no doubt. Nancy had been murdered. The city's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner conducted a full autopsy. Signs of visible trauma confirmed what investigators already feared: her death was not natural. It had been violent, swift, and cruel. The search for answers began immediately, but with limited resources and few leads, Nancy's case faded into silence, becoming just one of many unsolved cases in a city marked by countless untold stories. Decades would pass before a fresh set of eyes and the evolution of forensic science would breathe new life into her forgotten story. The findings from Nancy Hernandez's autopsy were grim. She had endured extensive physical trauma. Scenes of a brutal beating were evident. Most devastating of all, the medical examiner confirmed that she had been strangled. Further testing revealed that Nancy may have also been the victim of a sexual assault. Swabs were collected in hopes that biological evidence might one day identify the person responsible. Though her final moments had been filled with violence, investigators held on to the hope that the forensic evidence would eventually speak for her. In 2005, more than a decade after the crime, the DNA samples taken during Nancy's autopsy were sent for advanced testing. By then, forensic science had progressed significantly, offering investigators a new opportunity where traditional methods had failed. There was renewed optimism that science could do what no witness or lead had yet managed to uncover: the truth. But even with improved technology and persistent efforts, Nancy's case remained unsolved. The DNA yielded no matches, and the trail went cold once more. Nearly 20 years passed before the case was reopened. On October 11, 2023, the San Francisco Police Department's Cold Case Unit took another look at the preserved evidence. The DNA was submitted once again, this time to the Combined DNA Index System, or CARDIS. This time, there was a match. The profile was linked to a man named Ricky Dawson. His name was not unknown to law enforcement. Dawson had already been connected to 3 other cold case murders, each in a different state: Panama Beach, Florida, Seattle, Washington, and Denver, Colorado. The pattern in each of those assaults was chillingly familiar to Nancy's. The level of violence, the method, the targeting all echoed the brutality seen in San Francisco. Dawson had already been sentenced to 25 years in prison for the Florida case. Then, in February 2020,